Hello everyone, this is Kamran from Pragma, Norway, and I'm here with you with some very interesting videos on Traefik reverse proxy. It's going to be a series of videos, maybe 3 or 4, I don't know yet. And they would be lecture styled because I want to show you how it works, not just that it works. So they would be a bit longer than usual. So it's very exciting. I have very exciting topics for you, so let's get to it. I want to warn you a little that I have bad throat, and I'll try not to cough in the mic. I will try to mute it. The first thing we have is the material which I used for this video, and all of that is there in our GitHub repository, github.com/pragma/learn-Traefik. And if you browse down, scroll down, you will see 2 links to videos on the same topic which I made few days ago. They were in Urdu or Hindi, so you can watch them on my YouTube channel. Then we have topics covered in this video, and all of these of course will be covered. So let's start. First, let's visit Traefik's official website, which is traefik.io. And Traefik, the actual English word of course is traffic, but they played a little on the spelling and introduced this Norwegian alphabet here, which sounds something like a. So I'm not a born native Norwegian, so even I have trouble pronouncing it correctly. But anyhow, so Traefik, what is Traefik? It's a cloud native edge router, as they say, and for in easy words, it is a reverse proxy, or simply a proxy, or an SSL terminator. When they say cloud native edge router, it means that this supports a lot of cloud providers, and it works with their APIs. And what it does is something very intelligent. It basically talks to the cloud provider's API and just auto configures itself. It provides some very nice dashboard, which you can see here. This is the actual dashboard which Traefik provides, and this is the health matrix stats interface on the same port, on the same page. And this is the official diagram which Traefik provides, so I thought I will just use this one. So Traefik sits between the internet and your infrastructure, and it talks to whatever backend provider you might have, for example Docker or Kubernetes, and you configure it to talk to that provider, and then it auto configures itself. It does all the automatic routing, sets up all the, it does this auto discovery and automatic routing to the backends, and automatic also load balancing if your backends are multiple copies, so it does load balancing between them. It provides matrix tracing and logging, and it also provides HTTPS termination. It's very, very interesting and very fast and very lightweight. 74 megabytes is the size of its binary. No, not the binary, the Docker image, the Alpine image. Very small. And it says here that how you would run it or download and install it. It's very simple. You just run the the statically compiled binary, which is Traefik itself, and then you can optionally provide it a Traefik configuration file, which is called traefik.toml. They also provide you with a sample configuration file, which is very well documented. If you look at it, it's a lot of comments and yeah, so it's a lot of documentation. It's very well explained and simple as well. The Docker image you can run like this, and there are of course two versions of Docker images. One is the regular one and the other is Alpine, and I'll be using Alpine throughout this video. Right, so this was Traefik, and this is how you run it. So let's go to their documentation website. Where is it? Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that a lot of people are using Traefik, big companies. And let's see where's documentation. Of course, here. So it gives you the usual information, and it has all these features. Of course, you can read all about them, and it supports all these backend providers: Docker, Kubernetes, Amazon, Azure. And here is a very small Quickstart guide. It just gives you a Docker Compose file and asks you to bring it up, and we'll do the same. But before we do it, I'll just show you that this is in this Compose file. It's creating a service called reverse proxy. That's just a name. You can give it any name you want, using the Traefik image, Docker image, and it's passing two command line parameters or switches or modifiers to the image, which will of course pass it to the binary behind the scenes. And it's exposing and mapping two ports. One is port 80 to the host 80 and port 8080 to the host 8080. So this port 8080 comes alive when you pass the --API switch or parameter, and the --Docker parameter tells it that it's supposed to use a Docker backend, or Docker is the provider at the backend, the service provider for the containers or the services. And when it knows how to talk to Docker, but to talk to Docker it needs to know a so-called talking point, right? So we can provide this mount the Docker socket from the host within the Traefik container, so Traefik could talk to it and extract all the information from the Docker provider, Docker API. Alright, so we can bring it up like this, and Docker can let's see what happens. So here is my computer, and I'm in this repository, in this directory. I can go to examples, and there is a Quickstart, and I have the same Docker Compose which the documentation website provides, and I will verify that I have no containers running right now. And for the sake of completeness, I would actually clean up if there is anything in the stopped state. Okay, so I don't have anything on my computer running. I can now start this compose stack. So I'll do docker compose up -d, and I see one service has started, so I would do docker ps, and I can also do docker compose ps, which is exactly the same thing. It's just a different format of output. So here is the Docker Compose output, which shows me that this is the name of the container it has created with this entry point with these switches, and it's up, and of course it is mapped. It has mapped port 80 from the host to a port 80 inside the container, and also port 8080 from the host inside to port 8080 inside the container, the Traefik container. So we have it up and running. Let's see what do we get when we go to port 8080 on localhost, and this is the same computer on which I'm working. So I'll open up a browser here, and I would try to open an incognito mode every time. Localhost colon 8080, and it shows me this dashboard by default, which shows me one front end and one back end. And if I click the health tab, I get almost nothing. Means there is something, but it's almost useless at the moment. So we have providers and we have backends. What front ends and what backends has it configured? It has configured reverse proxy Quickstart 0. It has configured a host route that if this happens, then take it to this backend. And here is this backend. And here's the container, and it's most probably, of course, most certainly the IP address of the Traefik container. Alright, but this is not much use to it. This is not much use to us, because just by running a proxy we don't get anything. We want to run it with some other containers and see how it does routing, and how can we modify the routing, and how can we use it to our benefit. So let's go back to the terminal, and let's see some files here. Before I move on to a better example, I want to show you that when you do the --API Docker switches with as you did in this compose file, then what is the default config file which is created? So I want to show you that. How does it look like? And this is an example Quickstart file which I just created myself. A default entry point of HTTP is created, and if we go back to our this interface, the dashboard, you'll see that this is the entry point here which I'm talking about. One HTTP entry point is created, and this is the default entry point for now according to this configuration. It says that it has a Docker backend, and it is going to talk to it on this socket or this file, which we need to mount inside the container, of course. And this API will enable a dashboard, and will also set up a dashboard as entry point for this port. So when you enable API, and you say dashboard is true, then it basically creates a dashboard service which runs on port 8080, and anything which is related to 8080 is passed to that part of the service. Here we have some entry points which says if entry point is HTTP, then take it to port 80, and if entry point is dashboard, then take it to port 8080. So what does it mean when we have this API? That's also an interesting question. So when you have this dashboard, that's not the only thing which the API provides, or the API section provides. It also provides you with the actual Traefik APIs. For example, /API, if you type this, you will get certain information. If you change it to /health, you will get some other information. And there are many different APIs which Traefik provides, and we are going to look at it in a moment. So the quick start is done. Let's go to our repository, and I want to show you all the API switches or endpoints which Traefik provides. So we have this link, which is Traefik's configuration link, a website link, and it shows you a sample configuration. And if you scroll down, you will see this API, and you will see a lot of endpoints here, right? So it's not a good idea to enable API and then just leave it unprotected, because anybody who can reach your port 8080 can extract a lot of details from your API. So we'll see how to protect it a bit later. Let's stop this quick start and let's start another example. So I'm going to do a docker ps and do a docker compose stop, and also docker compose remove -f. Very good. I move back one step, and I have examples, so I go to example 1, and I hope the font is big enough for you to see. Alright, let's see if this is not problematic for me. Let's use this font size. I have example 1, and I have a docker compose file in that, so let's have a brief look at that. It has few services: Traefik, Nginx, Apache, Tomcat, and MySQL, and they are shown in an example, in a diagram. I mean, let me show you the diagrams as well, which I completely forgot. So this is actually the diagram of quick start. When you start Traefik just by the quick start example, it sets up a container, it sets up this port forwarding and all that, but we have covered that already. So let's go to our next example. This is our next example. So we are going to start Nginx, Tomcat, and Apache and MySQL 1, 2, 3, 4, and Traefik 5 containers. And if you look at this example, it has Traefik container itself, then it has Nginx, and then it has Apache and Tomcat and MySQL. And for now I will not use this port, to keep it simple. This is port 80, mapped to port 80 on my host 8080 as before, just like quick start. Then we have some very simple containers. Nginx will run Nginx Alpine. It will mount an index.html file on Nginx's default document root. And then we have Apache container, and that also mounts a very small index file on its default document root. We have Tomcat, and I have not specified any containers ports or anything, because I am assuming that all of these containers have an expose command in their container definition, and that's the port they are exposing. But you can use a port explicit port command here, but I'm not going to use that, and it's not necessary. There is the MySQL DB, which is just an example to kind of show you a real world example, that there is a web server which talks to a backend database. So there's a database running in the stack, and it has an environment variable which is necessary for MySQL to come up. This is something very simple, a very simple stack, right? And let's have a look at Traefik toml file, which I have here in this example. And what I have here is some additional things, which is a log level. I've increased the log level, and I would strongly advise that you always have some logging enabled. Otherwise you'll have a hard time figuring out why Traefik is not working. or if it's working, how is it working. Okay, so it has a Docker backend, and then we have this special thing called exposedByDefault is true. We will see that in a minute, and that's it. That's the Docker file we have. Nothing special. And that's the end of it. So let's exit this file and let's see if we have anything running. No. So let's start this. I'll clear the screen. I'll do docker compose up -d, and it started 5 containers. I want to verify, so I'll do docker compose ps, and I see 5 containers. Very good. And let's have a look at diagram. This is the diagram, and I have 5 containers. I have port 80 and 8080 mapped to Traefik only, and rest of the containers, whatever their ports are, they are not mapped on the host. Very good. Let's briefly look at the logs of Traefik. So logs minus logs, just logs of this container, and it will show you some logs. It will start from what configuration file it uses, what version it runs, and it prepared the HTTP server, it prepared the dashboard, and it's now listing on these 2 ports, and it's now talking to this provider, and it gives you an error, undefined entry points HTTPS, but otherwise it has started. And that is because in my Traefik.toml file here, I have this HTTPS entry point added. I can remove it for now because I'm not using HTTPS in this example. So I'll just save and exit, and I would just, for the sake of completeness, I will stop and remove and bring it up so you don't see these errors, because errors are not good for students. Errors are not good to study or learn anything. Docker compose, I mean, they are good, but you should know then how to fix them, and that's another good learning track. But right now I want to eliminate any confusion, so I've stopped and removed the previous stack. I'm bringing it up again. Okay, so I do docker ps. I have 5 containers running. If I do logs again, I have the logs started. Let me reduce the font a bit. Okay, I have these logs. It started this version, this and that, HTTP dashboard, and talking to this Docker provider, and now there are no more errors, and it just says that it's configured and reloaded on port 8080. That's good. Since it is mapped to our host, I can just go to my host now. This is the incognito browser, right? So I would do a localhost 8080, and this time I see 5 frontends and 5 backends. Okay, so how does it look like? And I'll spend a bit of time here because I want to highlight few things. First thing is, it has found all the front ends, so it has given them names, and it has configured some host rules for them, and each front end has a back end, and that back end is on the right side, and then it goes to the backend container, the actual container and the port. So in case of Apache, it has configured it as apache.example1, and it is going to send all the traffic when it reaches apache.example1 to this container at the backend. It has done similar thing with MySQL, and it will send it to port 3306 on another container. It has detected Nginx, and this is the Nginx backend. It has detected Tomcat, and it will send it to this backend, which is port 8080, which is correct, and it has detected traffic, and it has its backend, which is here, and it will send it to port 80. So there are few problems here and few confusions, might be confusions for you, that how on earth it figured out this thing, this host rule. This is supposed to be the host name or the FQDN of the service, but how does Traefik know about this? So the point is, at the moment our Docker Compose file doesn't contain any information on how these hosts are supposed to be routed, neither does our Traefik toml file. So when this piece of information is missing, then Traefik tries to use its intelligence, and what it does is it takes the service name from the Docker Compose file, and in Apache's case it was just Apache, and appends the directory name from where it's running, and in our case that is example1, and it joins it together and makes it a FQDN, so to speak. So if you go to terminal now, you see that I am in the example1 directory where I have all these files here, right? So this is how it has done the naming. All right, and as per the diagram, I have this naming set up. No, this is with proper names. I'm going to set up these names, but before I set up these names, how on earth am I going to access them and see if it works? So I have set up a local naming system, and of course on Unix and Linux it's just the etc host file. So if I edit my etc hosts file, I can show you that I have some name resolution set up. nginx.example1, Traefik, Tomcat, all of them are pointing to 127.0.0.1, which is my work computer here. So if I access any of those, the request should go to my computer, which is listening, or on which Traefik is listening on port 80 and port 8080. So some of it, this should work. I use some of it because of a reason, but let's see. Let's open another tab and say apache.example1. Let's do HTTP this one, right? So press enter. There you go. Press F5 and you have Apache serving some web page, and that's the simple web page, one liner I have mounted, one line index.html, which I've mounted in the as a volume in Apache container, and I can show it to you here just to avoid any confusion. Cat docker compose. This is the file which is mounted, and this file looks like this, just one line. Same goes for nginx. So if I go back to my browser, I see this is example.net served by Apache, but this is not what it says here, right? This is not example.net. But anyhow, let's move on. Let's check nginx.example1. That also works. This time it's served from nginx, which is good, and it's a different file. So far so good. If you think that I'm wasting your time now by checking each and every service, it's not so. It's on purpose. I'm going to show you Tomcat. So, Tomcat dot example1. So it goes to the Tomcat backend, which is running on port 8080. This also works. Now we check MySQLDB. So we have MySQLDB.example1 HTTP, and I type it and I get an error. It says internal server error. I press F5 a couple of times, but I get this error. And this is what you will see as well, and there's a reason to it. The reason is, and I have to show you the dashboard to actually show you why it's happening. So this is MySQL DB, and this is the host routing, this is going to the backend, this is going to this backend, which is okay. But the problem is that Traefik is an HTTP proxy. I forgot to mention that in the beginning. It's an HTTP proxy, it is not TCP proxy, and at the moment what we have asked it to do is to take this HTTP request and take it all the way to MySQL container here. So my HTTP request goes to Traefik, Traefik forwards it to MySQL, but MySQL says, hey, I don't understand what you're saying. I don't talk HTTP. I talk MySQL language, whatever that protocol is. So that's where it gets this error. So we have realized by this that MySQL should not be here, and actually database should not be here in the first place. You don't want to give access to your database to everyone from web interface. So we need to remove MySQL from here. That's one thing. And let's go to Traefik. We also have Traefik.example1, right? Now let's see what happens. If I type Traefik.example1 like so, what happens? It is waiting, and it will eventually time out. I'll just stop this one. Here's the problem. Traefik has configured itself as well and identified that it is Traefik.example1, no surprise here, and sends it to this backend, but it's going to the wrong port. It's going to the right container. Traefik is running on port IP 0.5, and if you think that it's listening on port 80, yes it is, but that's a routing port. That's where it receives the traffic to route it further. That's not where it's serving its dashboard. So we know that serving its dashboard on port 8080. So we can type Traefik.example1:8080, and then we'll get the dashboard. But that's not announced here. That's not visible here, right? So if I type Traefik.example1, it is going to the wrong port. And if you look at the Docker Compose file, Traefik is listening on 2 ports. So it's basically picking up the first one which it sees and just sets up a routing for that. And that's where it tries its own intelligence, because a certain piece of information was missing. So we have identified few problems in our setup, in the basic setup. We have non-optimal domain names or host names. We don't want MySQL here at all, and we want Traefik to go to the correct backend port without me specifying :8080 explicitly. So we have to fix these problems. To fix these problems, I have something for you here. Why all 5 containers are being exposed is because of this specific setting in the Traefik.toml file, and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to remove that for you. First I'm going to stop the container, all the complete stack. Docker compose stop, docker compose remove -f. Alright, let's have a look at Traefik.toml file. Here is the entry which says exposedByDefault is true. So I'm going to change it to exposedByDefault to false, and I'm going to start the stack again just by changing this directive. And I see docker ps. I have 5 containers running. Let's go to the dashboard. Here's the dashboard. Oh, what happened to the dashboard? Nothing happened. It's showing what you asked it to show. You said expose by default is false, so it's not exposing any containers by default to the outside world. It shows 0 front ends and 0 back ends, including Traefik. That's also hidden. And this is not what you want, right? So now we are going to enable these containers. So let's go back to our terminal. And let's stop this first, because we don't need this one. And now I have a helpful file for you, which is called Docker Compose Advanced. So I can do copy docker compose.yaml to docker compose. Simple. And let's edit the advanced file and just have a look. So what we are doing here is, it's the same file with some added directives. There are labels, and there are labels for all the containers we are interested in, right? So let's do that. I'm going to copy docker compose.advanced file to docker compose YAML. I'm going to overwrite that. I already made a copy as simple as docker compose.yaml.simple, so I can modify this. So now I'm modifying this file. I'm going to remove this directive here. This is not interesting for us right now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, basically this is the thing which I want to be enabled, right? I want this special label. So let's just for now, for the sake of complete understanding, let's just set up Traefik.enabled equals true in all these containers. And in MySQL, I'm not setting that label up. I want it to be hidden, right? And remember, it's going to be hidden only from the outside. From within the stack, they all can talk to each other, and I'll show it to you in a moment. Okay, so we have Tomcat, we have Apache. Very good. And the Nginx I can actually change to okay, never mind, sorry, I don't want to confuse you at the moment. I'm going to just enable these, and there's no need of 443 for now as well. This is very simple example, right? And we don't have anything running, right? So let's bring this up. Docker compose up -d. Very good. Sorry, docker ps. I have 5 containers. Very good. I like to see that. Docker compose ps. That's the same output, of course. Yeah. Let's go to the dashboard. This one. And you notice that it automatically reconfigures itself, at least refreshes itself, not reconfigures, refreshes itself. Now I see 4 backends. I see Apache, I see Nginx, I see Tomcat, I see Traefik. I don't see MySQL. And the other problems still persist. The host names are incorrect, and Traefik is still going to this backend, which is going to port 80. This is not what we want. So we are going to fix that as well. Now MySQL is hidden. How do I check that it's still accessible, right? So I go to my Docker Compose stack or the terminal, and I log into one of the containers. I log in Docker exec -it Nginx. No, sorry, name of the container, which is this one. and I do /bin/shell. Okay, I can do ping MySQL DB, which is the name of the service, and it pings it. It's pinging the correct container. I can ping Apache, and it will ping the other container. Notice this is 0.3. I could do telnet to MySQL DB on port 3306. Oh, this container doesn't have telnet. Of course not. This is a very small cut down version of Nginx, and that to be an Alpine. But there is a small container we have made at Pragma, which is very helpful, and I should have actually used that. So I can briefly show you. I can stop this stack because I'm going to enable that that container. It's called multitool. I'm just going to change one image. I'm going to say Nginx, and this is going to be it's going to be called pragma/network-multitool. That's it. And let's call it Nginx because actually this multitool runs Nginx as well as a service. So let's call it Nginx. Let's treat it as that. Docker compose up -d. Okay, I did not have Pragma Network Multitool on my computer. Never mind, it has pulled it. It was very small. So now I have my stack still there. If I press F5, I still have 4 front ends. I have Nginx. It's going to the right port. So let's see how it behaves. I don't see MySQL. The idea was to show you that MySQL is still available. So yeah, so let's do docker exec -it, and I can log into my Nginx container, which is actually a multitool. Very good. Now I can do telnet. I can do ping MySQL DB. It works. And if I can do dig. I can do lots of stuff. See, it is resolving to the 0.6, which was here. I can do telnet to any port. I can do curl as well. So let's do telnet to MySQL DB port 3306, and it goes and talks to it. See, it has reached the service at least. So I know that I can talk to my containers within this stack. I can do curl Apache. So I was showing you that even if something doesn't show on Traefik dashboard, doesn't mean that it's not there for the stack to use it. Alright, let's fix the other problems in this compose file in this whole stack. Exit from my Nginx container, and I have my stack running. I'm going to stop my stack, and yeah, come on. Okay, so I'm going to copy docker compose.advanced file to docker compose.yaml file again, right? And this time I have these labels set up. This is Traefik frontend rule, which says host traefik.example.org. It's enabled. Traefik.enable is true, and it will receive traffic on port 8080 on this container. All right, very good. I removed the 443 mapping for now. Okay. And I have Nginx set up as nginx.example.com and also as www.example.com and also as just example.com. So I can pass multiple names or CNAMEs within the same host front-end rule directive or label. Then I have Apache, and it is it has this rule: apache.example.net, www.example.net, and just example.net. We have Tomcat, just tomcat.example.com, and MySQL doesn't have anything because it doesn't need to. Very good. If you notice, some of them are example.net, some of them are example.com. This is just to show you the diversity in this stack and what all you can have. Even Traefik itself is example.org, and this is actually the example in the diagram here. So Traefik is shown here on the bottom left. It is listening on just port 80 and 8080, and rest of the 4 services are here. And the DNS is correctly configured in this way. So we will see how it works now. So let's go back to our terminal and do save and exit and do a docker compose up up -d. Very good. Let's check how many containers are there, because I want to see 5. Yes, total 5 containers, 1 Traefik and 4 services. Let's go to the dashboard, and this time I see if I refresh, I see front ends, 4 front ends, 4 back ends. But notice that Apache example.net is now having these host rules: apache.example.net, www.example.net, and so on. And Nginx has these rules, this host rule. Tomcat has this single host rule. Traefik has this one, example.org, traefik.example.org. That's fixed. So we have fixed the host names. And for Traefik, we have its backend here, and it is listening on the correct port now. Very good. So I'm going to test these in front of you. Before I do that, I'm going to just refresh this old example and see what happens. It says 404 not found, but my DNS is still pointing to this host name. My etc host file still has this entry which is pointing to 127.0.0.1. So Traefik is listening and receiving this request, but why is it saying 404? It is saying this because Traefik now does not have any host rules which are named apache.example1. So Traefik doesn't know how to handle this. When the traffic lands on Traefik web proxy, it sees this header and sees, well, I don't have any backend for that, so it just gives you this 404 page. So I'm going to close these tabs, and I'm going to open new tabs one by one. I'm going to check nginx.example.com, and this time I'm getting a response from my Nginx container, which is actually the multitool. I hope it's still the same, or is it coming from cache? But let's check apache.example.net, and that's coming from the correct container as well. This is example.net. Let's check tomcat.example.com, and that is also coming from the correct container. And let's check Traefik.example.com. example.org this time, without specifying port 8080 in the URL, and this time it goes directly to the dashboard. Very good. So all of our names which we configured are working properly. The ports, for example, for Traefik, it's mapped correctly to the backend port. Let's click on the health tab, and we see certain 200s, certain 302, certain 404s. Yes. And we see some response time matrix, we see some other stuff. Great. Very good. So we have fixed fixed the host names, we have fixed the ports, and we have actually configured everything according to this example here. So this example 1 is complete. Let's move on to example 2 in the next video.